And I got saved in the Chandler Church December 19th, 1976, a long, long time ago. What's kind of neat is my first encounter with Pastor Campbell. He was actually pastoring in Phoenix. Steve Garfield was the pastor of the church. And Pastor Campbell had linked himself with this congregation even back then. He was a constant visitor for revivals and things. In fact, he's so integral a part of this church's beginning that he actually came and taught classes to us on soul winning, how to win souls. And that stayed with us and allowed us to be more effective in our witnesses. Little did he know that the seed he planted in our hearts would carry over into another story in his life.
When Pastor Campbell came here, I was saved like maybe 4 years. And one of the first things I remember about Pastor Campbell is his first preaching. Actually, let me back up here. Pastor Campbell came to preach for us a revival, and 2 years before he came here. And the first thing we noticed about his preaching was it was so full of grace, so full of love, so full of redemption. And when he actually came to Chandler, we're like, oh my gosh, we're glad we have him.
But you could tell that he loved people. You could tell that him and Connie, you know how they say you have to give of yourself. They did. That's exactly what they did.
God was helping me. My marriage was an absolute wreck. I was in the Air Force, but my life just had no direction aside from that. But when Pastor Campbell came in '84, he really began to teach me how to be a man. He was actually the first man that was able to influence my wife at the time. And we served God in the church the entire time Pastor Campbell was here. He taught me discipline. The things that I learned so much from Pastor Campbell was his love for God and his passion, how to be passionate for God and not half-step, not just be somebody that comes to church and fills a seat, but give your all to God.
Hey, Pastor, how you doing? I got saved in 1981, and when you got here in '84, God really helped me. It showed me some things that I'd never seen because I didn't have a daddy figure. Growing up, my daddy was an alcoholic, hardly ever seen him. But you brought a whole dimension of what family is all about to my life. And between you and Connie, you all weave your life into mine and became a family. That's what family is all about.
I want to thank God for Pastor Campbell and Connie coming to Chandler. But the best part, in my opinion, of them coming is Connie. Because when all my friends left to fulfill the calling of God, I didn't have any. And I can remember going to Connie and asking her, would she be my friend? And she said yes, and she loved me just the way I was. I knew Connie loved me when she let me be in the Christmas card. I was just so moved and touched. And because my mother had died and we never took pictures together. Another thing was Connie made me a quilt, and it took time to hand make this quilt. She poured her love and her life into it. And another thing is Connie and I went on all of impact teams. We drove the van, and I knew she loved me and felt safe when she would let me drive and she could go to sleep, because she couldn't go to sleep with anybody else driving, especially Bill Moorhead.
When Christina and I first got married, I went to pastor one time, and I thought I was right. And we had gotten in an argument, and I went to him, and I'm like, I'm going to state my case to pastor, and he's going to say, yeah, you're right. You really need to go tell her this and this and this. And he jacked me up, and he said, you know what, you got a Hollywood mentality. And he used to tell that to a lot of people, I think. But you know what, I did, and he was right. And I listened to him, and he helped my marriage. And that's what I want to say. One of the hallmarks and one of the things I want to thank Pastor and Connie for is the steadfastness of his preaching, his example, how he treated Connie, his exampleship and steadfastness over the years has helped me. And I came from a family where my mom's been married 4 times, my dad's been married 3 times, my brother's been married twice, divorce just kind of runs in my family, and nobody takes it seriously. Without Pastor and Connie, and without God's help and getting saved, I never would have made it this long. Christina and I have been married almost 38 years now, and we want to thank God. We want to thank Pastor and Connie for all the years that they have helped us.
In 1990, I had backslid because Pastor Campbell had left. And when I came back, I remember I was sitting in the back row, and all I could hear was him saying, "When are you going to come home?" And I remember walking to the altar, and I thought, oh, God, you got to help me. And I had gotten to the altar, and there's Pastor Campbell standing there, and he's holding out his hands. And if you ever want to know what forgiveness is like, look into his eyes, because then you'll know. And he just smiled, and he grabbed my hands. And of course I started crying like now. And it was like I had never left.
I'd just like to say thank you to Pastor Campbell, because he's the reason why I'm saved to this day. When the church was going through a very difficult time, I had left the church, I had backslidden. Pastor and Connie came over for dinner, and Pastor looked at me and said, "Do you remember that time in the prayer room? Do you remember that time?" That's all he said. And I was transported back to when I felt the presence of God all over me. I leaned over to Pastor and said, "I never want to leave the presence of God." Shortly thereafter, I came back to church, and I've been coming ever since. And I've been Christian now for over 42 years, and I thank God for my pastor.
Hi, Pastor Campbell and Connie. We just want to say congratulations on 40 years of being in Chandler. No doubt anybody that remembers the church took a turn. Something fantastic happened when you came. So appreciate your leadership, your guidance, your direction, and above all, your friendship through the years. You've always been there for us. And we just want to say what a blessing the two of you are. And we thank God that He brought you both into our lives. God bless you.
Hello, Pastor. I understand it's been 40 years since you came to Chandler.
Just wanted to say we love you, Pastor, and appreciate you, and make this a special time for you and Miss Connie.
A lot of times people try to gauge time by things that they remember from those years ago. I remember even when you came for revival before you took the church. And I remember a faith for the long haul as you were preaching, and you talked about hot rods that are designed just to go a quarter mile, and how that the trucks were designed to go for long distance. And so here we are 40 years later, all trying to make the distance and make heaven our home.
I wanted to just share one memory, Pastor, that still laugh every time I hear you say it. And what I remember is we were at a conference in the Midwest, and Dave and I were in a band doing a special. And in that time, you got up to preach after we were finished, and you just shook your head, started laughing, and you said, "I can see it in my mind. Angie, 70 years old, still drumming and hitting her sticks together and saying, 'Hit it, Dave,' and no teeth." But I'm here to say, Pastor, I didn't make 70 years, just about 62, and I still have my teeth.
You know, I love Pastor and Connie, and I'm so grateful for their ministry, just like Steve said, just their faithfulness and just being there for us. You know, Pastor married us, and, he helped us at the beginning of our marriage, in those hard times in our life, because we all have them, but in those very important times that we dealt with, our daughter being a preemie, being a pound 13 ounces, going through a lot of medical problems, they were there to help us, to pray for us, to encourage us.
We love Pastor Campbell. We know deeply in our hearts that he's a man of God. And, it's like he always says, he's not going to sugarcoat anything, and he doesn't. he tells the truth, and the truth of not just about our lives, but about loving people and just caring for people.
I remember when Pastor Campbell came, you know, he brought a new dimension to the church.
I just want to say I'm thankful for Pastor being here all these many years. We got saved in 1981, and our marriage was a wreck at that time. And he came in, and we still had plenty of problems at that point. And God just helped us work through everything. And Pastor brought a maturity to our church and brought a maturity to our lives.
And so they've been here for all three of our children being born, Stephen, Philip, and Faith. They're all Christians and living for God, which is amazing and stuff. And I thank God because for Pastor and Connie, because we went through some difficult things, and they were there to be a voice of reason and help and encouragement.
So when Pastor Campbell came, he brought the whole church to a different level. We had initially sent out a few churches by then. Well, Pastor Campbell's vision for world evangelism and planting churches and everything really took off. And our church began to grow. We started catching the vision that he had for world evangelism and church planting.
Well, I want to thank Pastor Campbell and Connie for their 40 years of faithfulness to God, to the Chandler Church. I remember him coming and us just taking a bigger picture in the world evangelism, part of our fellowship. I can remember guys who didn't go to the Chandler Church who were kind of sad that Pastor Campbell wasn't their pastor. They would always say, "Oh man, you guys got Pastor Campbell." And for a little while I kind of said, "Yeah, we got Pastor Campbell," but after a few years I began to realize what a blessing it was to have him as our pastor, and I still think like that now. Ms. Connie, I want to thank you. You were there present when both of my kids were born, and I thank you for just caring enough to be there for that.
I'm just really grateful to be a part of what we're doing here and all the years that I've been here, and Pastor Campbell being my pastor for 40 years.
Long-term relationships is another thing too, because we've had Pastor Campbell for 40 years, and that's relationship right there. You know, not a lot of churches have a same pastor for 40 years and stuff.
And I just thank you, Pastor, for the love that you have shown to all of us, for being there for us.
That he's not afraid to pull back the bow and release the arrows. And that's been my experience. If you're willing, he's willing. And if your heart is to do something, he'll give you an opportunity to see that ministry come to fruition.
You remained firm and helped redeem us all from some very difficult times. And for that, we love you so much. And we're so grateful for you and your family, for Miss Connie, and all the sacrifices that you've made over the years.